Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are returning to War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition. This is going to be my first turn playing on my new monitor, which is a 1440p or whatever monitor. So I'm actually playing the game in a 1080p window, so please let me know if the text looks too small. To this point I've been playing in 16900 and then, or 1600 by 900 and then just upscaling. Because of the way the windows work, it's kind of weird, but you can see we're getting the turn off to what would have been a nice start here with an American submarine, the Tuna, trying to torpedo a Japanese cargo ship, the Yakuni Maru, but it looks like the torpedoes missed. We've got a Dutch submarine here south of Rabaul, which is getting depth charged by Japanese destroyers here. We may have to get them out of there. I think they were attacked last turn as well. So we'll go ahead and fast forward through this. No hits, fortunately for us, in effectual ASW work, other than the fact that they're keeping our sub pinned down. You can also see another sub attack here against the same submarine. It looks like they've got two task forces in the region, but they didn't even drop depth charges there. Air operations phase at night. Now, if you'll remember from our last turn, we did a sweep over, was it Chiang Mai or near Chiang Mai, and we really badly shot up the Japanese Air Force in Burma. So hopefully we're able to continue some positive results in the air campaign this turn. We'll see how it plays out. It's probably going to be a relatively quiet turn, but we'll see how things play out here. By the way, guys, let me know if the audio is okay here. Ooh, we've got a PT boat. Is this an attack or they located us? It looks like some cargo ships on the northern tip of Java and a Dutch PT boat, but everybody decides they don't want to fight. I don't think TM4 has any fuel in it, so it would not be effective at fighting there. It looks like it might have interrupted some Japanese troops unloading over the beach, though, so it might have slowed down some resupply or whatnot that's occurring there. And all right, so a lot of recon, not a lot of combat so far. We'll fast forward here a little bit. Some Japanese bombers hitting some isolated troops of ours in China. Really just a training mission. You can see them inflicting some casualties there. Some of our bombers hitting some Japanese troops in central China as well. Not really doing anything there. We've got 22 bombers coming in on a Japanese armor to the east of Sian, which last we checked was still withdrawing. So we're trying to slow that process up, force them into combat formation so they move less quickly to hinder his redeployments in China and slow things down because time is on the Allies' side. 10 Blenheims hitting Japanese troops to the east of Pegu, which were also falling back to Chiang Mai as well. Do a little bit of actual damage there, so they probably were forced into combat move. Air operations PM phase. So it was a pretty quiet morning, not a lot of air activity. Not a big surprise after the Japanese losses last turn. I'm still not really in a position to launch large-scale assaults or anything like that through the air. We can do hit or miss attacks or, you know, hit and run attacks, but our ability to sustain a long-term air campaign at this point is still pretty limited. Let me know if it's a little bit better now, Delric. I had to like completely pull the whole setup apart to set my new monitor up. I got a desk mount and everything for my monitors, which is pretty sweet, but it meant literally unplugging everything and moving things around. Okay, so we've got Japanese deliberate attack on the west coast of Borneo. 12-1 odds. Isolated Dutch unit there getting wrecked. Looks like they were wiped out by attrition, so that unit's gone. Calcutta expands its airfield to size 6. Langkawi expands fortifications to size 3. And Ulaanbaatar expands fortifications to 2. Kuibyshev expands fortifications to 2. And that looks like it's about it. So a very quiet turn. Now, Lodrick and I have agreed to sort of a tentative, I wouldn't call it a ceasefire, but at least we've agreed to a short period of less aggressive actions. That doesn't mean if there aren't opportunities that we can't strike, just like last turn at Chiang Mai. But generally speaking, this will probably be a pretty quiet couple of days coming up here as he gets his feet underneath him, as we give him some time to reorganize. And that time should play well into our own hands as well, especially in Burma, where we can use that to shore up some, situations there, maybe bring in a couple of brigades of British reinforcements and really strengthen our position there. Best air unit in the game right now, Pineto, is a squadron of the American Volunteer Group, the Flying Tigers, in Burma, which are flying P-38s. We have one group equipped with P-38s. We don't really have any P-38 production so far. We pulled it from some training squadrons on the West Coast and shipped it to Burma. And so we have like 27, I want to say, P-38s flying with what had been the Flying Tigers, one squadron of them led by Pappy Boyington in Burma. And they have 15 aircraft in reserve as well. So that's definitely our best squadron at this time. So if we go ahead and we take a look at Burma, we check out Rangoon, we can see we actually have quite a few of those P-38s down for maintenance, 12 of them. Mainly because they flew 2 days ago, and the P-38 is an incredibly finicky aircraft. It requires a very high airfield level for it to stay operational over extended periods of time. So we shot down a whole bunch of enemy aircraft. This actually claims this group shot down 20 enemy aircraft so far, with one ops loss, 13 write-offs, but I believe the turn two turns ago was one maybe op loss, maybe, I'm not even sure. 20 air-to-air enemy kills, and or maybe that's our own losses, I'm not sure. The squadron was flying P-40s before this. But you can see these guys are very experienced. Pappy Boyington leads the group. Major Pappy Boyington, experience of 84, air combat skill of 80, strafing of 76, defensive flying is 74. He's flown 78 missions, 7 kills. We actually have 2 pilots with 7 kills in here. C.H. Older is another one. And we have, half a dozen aces in this squadron. Everybody pretty much has experience of 68 or better. And that went up a little bit in the turn the other day. But they're flying P-38Es, which we have 15 in the replacement pool, but I don't think there's any production of the P-38 right now. If we go to air, where do we look here? Pools. Aircraft replacement pool. We take a look at fighters, and we get rid of everything except the U.S. Army. We can see here that we've got P-38E Lightning, 15 in the pool. 24 replacement rate, but production doesn't begin until May. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, the P-38 has no production. Once we get to May, then that's the 4205. We'll begin seeing basically one P-38 roll off the assembly line. Well, every two out of every 3 days. Oh God, I can't even do the freaking math. Yeah, 2 out of every 3 days we'll get a P-38E as of May, and then in August it'll bump up to 40, so better than 1 a day for the P-38F. But that's when we'll really start seeing production ramp up, where we'll get more than 1 a day. So there's that. But right now, most of what we're living with here is P-400s, P-40Es. We're producing 35 replacement production. I don't understand the difference between the replacement rate and this is month to date, but there's a production rate and there's a replacement rate, which I don't understand the difference in the game. I'm not sure there is one, because nothing has a production rate, only replacement rates, but we're basically getting 1 P-40 a day right now. And we've built up a fairly healthy pool at the moment. 52 of those are in reserve. We're building about 25 a month of the P-39D, which is a less capable at high altitude aircraft, but it's still, a modern fighter by definition compared to everything else out here. And then we're also producing 36 P-400s, which are a variant of the P-39 Airacobra. So those are the aircraft we're getting right now. Basically, we're getting, what is that? 36, 61... just shy of 100 fighter aircraft a month right now are under production. If we take a look at and those are just Army fighters, that's not including the Navy F-4 Wildcats. If We take a look at the heavy bomber situation right now. We have 8 B-7 or LB-30 Liberators being replaced a month, so a very slow production rate. And then 15 B-17Es, so one every other day basically, per month. 7 in the pool, 40 used so far this month. And then it looks like in, July, we'll begin getting a B-24D Liberator every other month. In August, we'll get B-17Fs, 24 a month. And then in 1943 is when the production really ramps up on the bombers, the B-24 specifically. We'll start getting like 70 different B-24 variants, but that's not till, early and then mid 1943. And then the B-17G swings massively up in 1945. Presumably those are B-17Gs being transferred across from Europe. If the war is still going on in September, we'll get 135 replacements and 115 production. So you'll be looking at, 250 B-17Gs a month starting in late 45. Again, that's got to be aircraft being transferred from the European theater. The Super Fortress eventually will be better than 1 a day. Actually, depending on, it looks like 2 a day between the 2 different variants. So that's aircraft production right now. We didn't see a lot of aircraft losses. In fact, no aircraft losses this turn. Japanese sortie rates pretty high for no aircraft losses, not even ops losses. Our sortie rate was pretty strong as well at about 5,000. So we had, considerable activity, but I've never seen a turn with no losses on either side, especially with over 8,000 sorties flown. I do think we got a new cruiser at Colombo. I think we got a new British heavy cruiser. Is it the Exeter? I thought I saw something about or maybe it's not here. Maybe it's, was it in Cape Town? Yeah, the Devonshire arrived. So we got a new British London class heavy cruiser here. It has 8 8-inch guns. It's a treaty class cruiser. Just showed up this turn. And then if we look at repaired ships being repaired, the Prince of Wales is still 250 days away, but the Repulse is just 23 days away from being ready. And actually, we could probably pull it out of the shipyard really soon because it's only got 2 engine damage left as major damage, which requires being in the shipyard. But once the engine damage is down to 0 major, in theory, we could put it alongside the dockyard and repair there. I'd have to take a look and see if that'll be a faster or slower repair time than staying in the shipyard. Also, presumably once the Repulse comes off the repairways, that'll free up 35,000 tons in the yards. Right now we're using more than the available capacity in South Africa, 88,000 tons of repairing ships. So that might actually speed up the Prince of Wales repair time a little bit as well. We can hope. She still has tons of major engine and flooding damage. So she is nowhere near ready to come back online. I do it to a critical. What is it? Does it change anything? Saves us 2 days. It's not meaningful. What about Repulse? She's set to high. If we go to critical on her, there's no change, so there's no reason to do that. We could also move some of these other ships to like low. Some of them already are. Doesn't really make a huge difference. So meanwhile, you can see here we are unloading some supplies in Rangoon. We've got about another 16,000 supplies which have arrived this turn in Rangoon. So go ahead and keep those guys docked. We'll go ahead and have them unload. And you can see here they're already unloading. So we're bringing about another 16, 23, about 35,000, just shy of 35,000 supplies. Oh my God, can't do math. 25,000 supplies into Rangoon here at the moment. Rangoon also has a lot of supply already. It's sitting with 106,000. Pegu nearby has 13,000. Mandalay up the railway has 14,000. So Burma is flush with supply right now. And that supply is flowing into China, which is helping China's situation. China's supply has more than doubled since the start of the war, which is the only reason we've been able to sustain our air operations over China for the moment. You can see this armor is still withdrawing to the east. And so it looks like they are continuing their withdrawal from the Cyan Theater, which is good news for us, at least in the short term. You know, wherever that armored fist goes might be in some serious trouble, but at least in the short term, having them withdraw would be great. Looks like they stopped the withdrawal at Quilin, so they still have their 8 units there. I don't have the strength to push them out, but that's interesting considering the situation down there. We're trying to build forts up there. We're at level 3, working toward level 4. If he doesn't bombard us there, that helps us. It speeds up the building process. Having level forts in Quilin would be great for us because it is a city hex, which means you can use engineers to reduce fortifications. You can't do that in non-city hexes. But you can see here it's wooded terrain, so it's ×2 defensive bonus plus the 3 forts. It would be great to get that up to 4. I think the potential vulnerable place for him to crack through could be north of Chikikong, because Chikikong has built its forts up to level 5 and is working on level 6 forts. It's also rough terrain, so it's ×3 defensive terrain, I believe. There's ×3 to the north of that as well, but we don't have level 5 forts up there. I think in open fields or in open terrain, not part of bases, the highest I'm able to go right now are level 3 forts with all of these Chinese cores up here. So we have a good strength here, and we've got good terrain bonuses and a good fort, and we're behind a river. But that could potentially be a vulnerable place for him to make a drive toward Chongqing. I think the more likely approach would be swinging along the rail line in the south near Quilin. But that would require him to bring his armor south. He can do that probably in a couple of weeks, which hopefully would be enough for us to get the fort level up to 4. Although I've heard conflicting reports on whether forts are ignored when armor attacks you. So we'd probably want to get more anti-tank guns down there. I'm also trying to build a sort of redoubt in the mountains to the north of Cyan, because Cyan is not the most defensible terrain. It's in clear terrain, so it has level 4 forts, which is nice, but it's also vulnerable to armored attacks. So I'm working on building a redoubt in the mountains up here to protect Chongqing if Cyan falls eventually. Meanwhile, we are working on bringing some additional troops into Rangoon. So actually these transports are pulling back to Calcutta. They've already dropped their supply. We have a British brigade of troops. The 23rd Infantry Brigade here is on the way to Rangoon. If air attacks are kept off them, this will be great to bring the 23rd Brigade in. 108 British infantry sections are very good troops, experience level of 80. These guys would be absolutely vital in helping push back or hold back any Japanese drive into Burma. They're very vulnerable, especially in open terrain, because the British replacement pools are so bad. But if I can get them into Rangoon, that'd be great, especially with the supply level there. They should be able to fight effectively there for quite a while. And Rangoon does produce some of its own supply because it has refineries. Meanwhile, at Batavia here, we can see he hasn't really been bombarding us here at all. So we still have about 1,000 Dutch troops, or 1,000 assault value of Dutch troops here, surrounded by the Japanese, but plenty of supply here for the 46,000 troops that are surrounded. They're in good defenses. They have level 4 fortifications. They have jungle. I think that's jungle terrain. Can't really read that. It looks like jungle terrain. So Batavia has jungle terrain, level 4 forts. We're working to get it up to level 5. I don't think we ever will, but we are working on that. Yeah. Supplies required are 29,000. We got 49,000. Now, if he brings in a surface task force with battleships, he could nuke that real fast and crush that supply down. But given that we're up to level 4 forts, that hopefully helps minimize how much he nukes us. Meanwhile, if we swing a little bit further south and we take a look at Perth, he did sink a transport that was on the way into Perth with fuel 2 turns ago. The 2 remaining tankers in that 3-tanker task force are coming in with 11,000 fuel. We're trying to pump as much fuel into Perth as we can. That will support naval operations out of Australia, but then that fuel also can move along the supply line here, along these rail lines here to the east coast where the industry produces supply. Australia has seen a considerable increase in its overall supply through effective logistics so far since the war began. The real problem in the South Pacific is New Caledonia down here, where the Japanese have probably overextended themselves, but have also really kind of put a crimp in our logistics coming from the U.S. East Coast, so that most of our transports are diverting to South Africa and then the west coast of Australia, but that does add considerable time to any transport. We do have a bastion here on Fiji, which we are working on building our fortifications up there. They're already at level 4 at Suva, working toward level 5. And then at Nadia, I want to say they're level 3, working toward 4. We also have some considerable airfields there that would help us in the defense against any Japanese attack. And then we are working on building up some bases like Tongatapu and Vavu to their east, southeast, so they can transfer reinforcements into Suva via air if necessary. A counterattack at Savi could be something we would consider eventually. Another potential counterattack that we might consider is Midway. Both are isolated Japanese positions. It's just a question of if we can find a way to make sure we know where their carriers are so that we don't get lured into a carrier battle. I'd also really like to take Canton Island as well to kind of push back against some of these potential seaplane bases along our supply line in the Central Pacific here. The Canton can really look out over Christmas Island down to Penryn and can kind of hinder your ability to detect Japanese advances. If we could put patrol planes on both Baker and Canton, we could get a nice look in toward Tarawa, in toward the Marshall Islands, in toward the Ellice Islands, so we'd really push our detection radius further east. Meanwhile, where is our transports right now? We've got a division of troops, the 27th Infantry Division, I believe it is. Although this is elements of that. That's not the actual division itself. On the way to Panama from the U.S. West Coast. I want to say there's more over here. Maybe not. Where's the rest of the 27th Division? That's definitely not all of it. Oh, here it is on all these other transports. So we've got the 27th Infantry Division and 2 field artillery battalions and regiments on transports on the way to South Africa. From there, we can either make the decision to send them to the west coast of Australia, or we could make the decision to send them to India or to Burma. So that does give us time to decide where to put them. We also have the AmeriCal Division, which is historically got its nickname from being deployed to New Caledonia, I believe, is the story anyway, which is currently making the transit toward Sri Lanka, and then we'll probably move into Burma or to India, depending on the situation when it gets there in a couple of weeks. In theory, if we needed to divert them to the west coast of Australia, they'll be near Perth in a couple of days. So that's something we could also consider. Game is not on Steam, Vilo. If you are interested, you have to buy it through the developer's website. They've never put it on Steam. It is a 10-year-old game. So it is, you know, it's something that kind of when it came out, Steam was not what it is now. But you can get it through Matrix's website. It's currently on sale for 80% off. I'm not sure when the sale runs to, probably like the first week of January. But the game is available at the link in the chat there. So the same developer has War in the East 2, which is on Steam, and War in the East 1, and also War in the West. This is an older version of sort of their game system. Not as streamlined as those games, but it also is the only one that deals with the Pacific Theater other than Uncommon Valor, which just looks at the South Pacific. And so I think it's very unique because there's not a lot of good Pacific War games, in my opinion. And this one is a little bit overwhelming at times, for sure, but it really tells the story of the Pacific Theater, I think, in a way that I've never seen any other war game do it. And it does a good job because of the way the day and night phases work, of actually making things feel like they're happening in a real day-night cycle, kind of like they would have, where you've got aircraft going out and searching for the enemy, you know, strikes being spun up and sent out. You know, you don't really get that in like a turn-based game where you've got like 2-week turn increments. It just doesn't feel right for the way that naval combat unfolded. Yeah, War in the East came out after this, though, history, so that's why. All right, so I mean, this is kind of a quiet turn. I'm not sure I have a lot else to show you guys right now. We can take a look at the available ships. A couple of days we get a cargo ship and an AMC and a troop transport. In about 2 weeks we get the British carrier, the Illustrious, as well as an anti-aircraft cruiser, the San Diego. We took a look at ground replacements. Those are aircraft replacements. But either way, we get some Kitty Hawks at Cape Town in a week, or actually in a day, sorry. We get some B-26s in the eastern U.S. in a day. I think most of those are transiting, or maybe those are new. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're transiting via rail from anywhere. But a bunch of aircraft units coming online in a day. Eastern U.S. Some Buffaloes will come in at Tigilap if we still have that in 8 days. We probably won't. Some more Buffaloes coming into Pearl in about a little over 2 weeks, as well as some Dauntlesses and Catalinas. Yeah. Where's our ground replacements? Ground reinforcements. So in 3 days, we have the Southwest Pacific HQ coming online at Brisbane. It'll be commanded by Douglas MacArthur, so I guess he'll transfer automatically from the Philippines in 3 days. He's still stuck there in the Philippines right now. And it would cost us 200 political points to move him, so that's not something I want to do. In 6 days, we'll get a Chinese corps at Chongqing, which I believe is a replacement corps. We'll get 240 infantry sections, 17 machine gun sections, and 219 support. So a good amount of infantry, but no real support equipment. In 7 days, we get the 32nd Infantry Division, which is the good old National Guard units pulled out of Wisconsin. In the Southwest Pacific, they'll arrive in San Francisco, unrestricted, so we can move them wherever we want, a full new division in a week. We'll also get the 762nd and 763rd Tank Battalions. Those will be restricted to Pearl, but once they arrive, we'll have 120 more assault at Pearl Harbor, so we probably look at moving some of those other unrestricted units currently at Pearl out of there as we increase our garrison there. Restricted basically meaning we can't move them. And that's about it. The 58th Separate Infantry Regiment is in 16 days. They'll come in at Tacoma. They're not restricted. They're for the North Pacific. Velo, Knights Valor, and Frailable. Thank you for the follows. And the 18th Canadian Brigade will come in restricted in 16 days at Victoria. 76 IAC Regiment will come in at Madras in 16 days. And the 22nd East African Brigade will come in at Mombasa in 16 days. The 26th Indian Brigade will come in at Madras in 16 days. And the 11th Indian Division will come in very understrength in 17 days at Karachi. For some reason, they'll have only 3 infantry sections. So that's interesting. I don't think they're a rebuilt unit. Some of the Indian units are massively under strength. I wonder if they build up over time as the Indian Army was historically built up. Okay, so those are the ground reinforcements. So far, the pools, I mean, we're doing okay, mostly. Let's take out the industry, because that doesn't mean anything. We don't manage that. And let's take out the Soviet stuff, because they're not in the war at the moment. So we have a lot of naval support and engineers in the pools here. 4,100 engineers, 4,600 naval support, 1,200 support. We have 825 Chinese rifle squads currently in the pool and ready to be pulled. China's supply situation usually precludes massive withdrawals of Chinese troops, but we actually have some almost into Burma. So once they get in there, they're really going to be able to flood themselves with replacement pools. So that'll be nice. We'll be able to build up a real strong core once we get those units over there. And that'll make taking Burma more difficult for Lodrek. We also have 76 millimeter field guns, which I believe would go to the Chinese as well. 173 of those. Looks like 137 of those have come from other units getting replacement guns. So I don't know if those would go to some of the Chinese units as well. 172 Chinese cavalry squads, 146 Filipino rifle squads. We don't really have the supply for the Filipino rifle squads to draw replacements. 86 Indian infantry sections of 1942 layouts, so those could be useful. Once we get a little bit higher, we could probably refit an Indian brigade with much better infantry. 81 USMC rifle squads, 79 155 millimeter howitzers, 79 U.S. heavy machine gun sections, 75 50 or half-inch M2-8B anti-aircraft guns, 72 New Zealand militia sections, some sound detectors, 54 Grant Lee tanks that could be useful in an armored battalion, 52 U.S. 41 rifle squads, 50 long toms. Okay. All right, so that's the resupply section here. Yeah, Velo, in terms of pricing, I would really compare these more with like hardcore board games because that's really how they're built as opposed to like PC games when you're talking about like pricing strategy. Okay. Yep, that would be an accurate assessment in history. I don't think anyone gets more detailed than Grigsby, for better or worse. The Japanese side is far more detailed. They have to manage their entire industry and like build aircraft engines, build airframes, mate the airframes to engines. It's really kind of a headache. But we're not playing as the Japanese, so the Allied industry is largely off map and automated. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up here. I hope you enjoyed yet another episode of War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, our Let's Play series against Lodric. There's a link in the description to his channel if you're interested in following on the Japanese side. But if you do that, remember, as always, do not comment in our game here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts below. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.